They were part of the most legendary crime saga in cinematic history, The Godfather, a film that redefined storytelling, loyalty, and power. But the actors who brought these characters to life carried their own dark stories off-screen, marked by heartbreak, addiction, scandal, and tragedy. In today's video, we're remembering 13 unforgettable actors from The Godfather who left this world with stories as powerful and often more painful than the roles they played. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments which character left the deepest mark on you. 1. Marlon Brando, Don Vito Corleone. Marlon Brando wasn't just an actor, he was a revolution. When he stepped into the role of Don Vito Corleone in The Godfather, he did more than perform, he transformed. At 48, with cotton stuffed in his cheeks and a whisper that became a roar, Brando redefined what it meant to become a character. His portrayal won him his second Academy Award, solidifying his place in cinematic immortality. But away from the camera, Brando's life was steeped in chaos. His career, often hailed as brilliant, was also marred by controversy and volatility. He clashed with directors, refused to memorize lines, and once even mailed in a Native American activist to decline his Oscar, sparking outrage and headlines worldwide. He was a fierce advocate for civil rights, but a man who seemed constantly at war with the industry that made him a legend. His personal life unraveled even faster. Brando married 3 times, all ending in heartbreak, and fathered at least 11 children, many from brief relationships. But it was tragedy with his children that haunted him most. In 1990, his son Christian fatally shot Dag Drolet, the boyfriend of his daughter Cheyenne, at Brando's own home. The trial was a media circus. Christian served time. Cheyenne, battling depression and substance abuse, died by suicide in 1995 at just 25. Brando never recovered. He isolated himself in his Beverly Hills compound, ballooned in weight to nearly 350 pounds, and became dependent on oxygen tanks due to lung damage. He once told a friend, "If there is a hell, I'm in it." Diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis, liver cancer, and diabetes, his final years were filled with regret, failed friendships, and financial ruin. He even sold memorabilia to cover mounting debts. He died on July 1, 2004, at UCLA Medical Center at age 80. His ashes were scattered in Tahiti, where he once found peace, and Death Valley, far from the studios and sound stages he grew to despise. For all his greatness, Marlon Brando remained an enigma, both a genius of the screen and a man broken by life off it. 2. James Caan, Sonny Corleone. As Sonny Corleone, James Caan roared through The Godfather like a force of nature, brash, impulsive, and unforgettable. His brutal death at the toll booth became one of cinema's most shocking scenes. It earned him an Oscar nomination and cemented his place in Hollywood history. But behind the larger-than-life performance was a man wrestling with demons every bit as intense as the character he played. Born in the Bronx in 1940, Caan grew up in a working-class Jewish family and played football at Michigan State before shifting to acting. He was known for being tough, magnetic, and a bit of a wild card, both on and off set. Directors admired his raw intensity, but he was also famously difficult, often clashing with filmmakers and storming off productions. His personal life was equally turbulent. Caan married 4 times, all ending in divorce. He fathered 5 children, including actor Scott Caan. Though he loved his kids, he admitted to not always being present, especially during his years of hard partying and drug use. The 1980s were his darkest chapter. After the death of his beloved sister from leukemia, Caan spiraled into depression, cocaine abuse, and financial ruin. He vanished from Hollywood for nearly 5 years. His turning point, painfully honest moment. Seeing his dog emaciated because he couldn't afford food shocked him into sobriety. He clawed his way back, taking roles in films like Misery, Honeymoon in Vegas, and later Elf, which introduced him to a new generation of fans. Off-screen, he was a study in contradictions. A trained martial artist, 6th-degree black belt, a rodeo cowboy, and a man once suspected by the FBI of having mob connections. He allegedly hired someone to rough up Joe Pesci over an unpaid hotel bill, stories that only added to his myth. Despite chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, and congestive heart failure, Caan kept working. His final film, Fast Charlie, released posthumously, was his swan song. He died on July 6, 2022, in Los Angeles at 82. The man who once played the hot-headed heir to a crime dynasty died with grace. No bullets, no rage, just silence and legacy. 3. John Cazale, Fredo Corleone. Fredo Corleone was timid, insecure, and tragically doomed. John Cazale played him with such aching vulnerability that his betrayal in The Godfather Part 2 didn't just sting, it shattered. Yet the man behind Fredo was just as tender, just as troubled, and far more brilliant than many ever realized. Born in Massachusetts in 1935, John Holland Cazale wasn't built for the spotlight. He was soft-spoken, intensely private, and radiated a melancholy that seemed to pour into every role he played. He wasn't flashy, and he never sought fame, but his talent, undeniable. Between 1972 and 1978, Cazale made only 5 films: The Godfather, The Conversation, The Godfather Part 2, Dog Day Afternoon, and The Deer Hunter. Every single one was nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. An unmatched feat, his performances were subtle and raw, often capturing the quiet pain of men torn apart by the world around them. Director Sidney Lumet once said, "John had an infinite sadness in the most delicate way. It made him extraordinary." In 1976, while working on The Deer Hunter, Cazale was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. Doctors warned he wouldn't survive through production, but he refused to quit. His friend Robert De Niro personally covered the film's insurance to keep him in the cast. His partner, Meryl Streep, just beginning her own rise to stardom, was by his side every step of the way, reportedly taking jobs near the set just to stay close. Even as cancer ravaged his body, Cazale insisted on working. He died on March 13, 1978, at just 42 years old. The Deer Hunter hadn't even been released yet. He never lived to see his final performance celebrated. Al Pacino, who acted alongside him in multiple films and called Cazale his best friend, said, "All I wanted to do was act with John again." Though he never became a household name, John Cazale was revered by the greatest actors of his generation. He was, quite simply, an actor's actor, one whose quiet power still lingers in every frame he ever touched. 4. Lenny Montana, Luca Brasi. On screen, he was the Don's most feared enforcer. Off-screen, he was one. Lenny Montana, a real-life mob enforcer for the Colombo crime family, was cast after Coppola saw him working as a bodyguard. Haunted by his past, Montana drank heavily and feared mafia retaliation. He died of a heart attack in 1992 at age 66, once a symbol of power, gone in silence. 5. Richard Bright, Al Neri. Al Neri didn't say much, but when he acted, it was final. Michael Corleone's cold and calculating enforcer, played with chilling restraint by Richard Bright, became the trilogy's silent executioner. He was the man who killed Don Barzini during the Baptism Massacre, who quietly eliminated Fredo on Lake Tahoe, and who carried out Michael's final dark command in The Godfather Part 3. But Bright himself never basked in the fame of the franchise. His life off-screen was one of tireless work, artistic risk-taking, and painful obscurity. Born in Brooklyn in 1937, Richard Bright began acting at 18 in the early days of live television. A fixture of New York's experimental theater scene, he took roles that few mainstream actors dared to touch. In the 1960s, he was arrested multiple times during performances of The Beard, a controversial play deemed obscene by authorities. Though he eventually won in court under First Amendment protections, the label of troublemaker stuck and followed him for years. While The Godfather brought him recognition, Bright never broke into leading man status. He remained a character actor, known for his intensity and authenticity. Outside of the trilogy, he appeared in films like Once Upon a Time in America, Red Heat, and The Getaway, as well as in independent projects and interactive media like The Video Game Ripper. His personal life was marked by tension. His marriage to actress Rutanya Alda faced repeated strains due to his long absences for off-Broadway plays and independent films. He suffered from emphysema in his later years, often seen using an oxygen tank, something he cleverly incorporated into some of his roles to mask his declining health. But the greatest tragedy came in 2006. On February 18th, while crossing the street in Manhattan, Richard Bright was struck by the rear wheels of a tour bus. The driver never saw him. No charges were filed, just a suspended license. He was 68. A man who portrayed death with quiet precision on screen died anonymously on a city street. But for true fans of The Godfather, Al Neri and Richard Bright will never be forgotten. 6. Abe Vigoda, Salvatore Tessio. Can you get me off the hook, Tom, for old time's sake? With that quiet, desperate line, Salvatore Tessio sealed his fate, and Abe Vigoda sealed his legacy. His portrayal of Tessio, the once-trusted capo regime who dares to betray Michael Corleone, was a masterclass in understated sorrow. There were no screams, no struggle, just resignation. A man who knew his time had come, but Abe Vigoda's own time kept coming, and coming. Born on February 24, 1921, in Brooklyn to Russian Jewish immigrants, Vigoda didn't hit it big until he was in his 50s. Before The Godfather, he worked steadily but anonymously on stage and in television, taking whatever roles he could to support his family. When Francis Ford Coppola cast him as Tessio, Vigoda was still relatively unknown, a 51-year-old character actor with a mournful face and a weary presence. He brought exactly what the role needed. His breakout led to one of his most beloved TV roles, Detective Phil Fish on Barney Miller and its spin-off, Fish. With his droopy eyes and bone-dry delivery, Vigoda became a fan favorite, perfectly blending comedy with world-weary charm. But as his fame grew, so did a bizarre twist of fate, rumors of his death. In 1982, People magazine mistakenly published his obituary. Rather than lash out, Vigoda embraced it. He posed for photos sitting upright in a coffin, poked fun at the media, and leaned into the macabre joke. It became a running gag that spanned decades, referenced on late-night shows, sitcoms, and even Super Bowl commercials. The man was practically immortal by meme status. Yet behind the humor was a more somber reality. Vigoda was married twice, but neither union brought lasting happiness. After the death of his second wife in 1992, he lived a largely solitary life, candidly expressing frustration over being typecast in supporting roles. He longed to show the world he had more to offer. In the end, the joke did end. On January 26, 2016, Abe Vigoda passed away at age 94 at his daughter's home in New Jersey. No headlines, no fake-outs, just a quiet goodbye to a man who turned betrayal into legend and outlived his obituary by more than 30 years. 7. Al Lettieri, Virgil the Turk Salazzo. Al Lettieri didn't just play a gangster, he lived like one. Allegedly related to a real mob boss, he brought dangerous authenticity to his role. Al Pacino later said Lettieri took him to meet real mobsters for research. But Lettieri's lifestyle caught up with him. A heavy drinker and smoker, he died of a heart attack in 1975 at just 47. 8. Alex Rocco, Mo Green. Mo Green built Vegas in the film and paid for it with a bullet. Alex Rocco, born Alexander Petricone, had a real gangster past as part of Boston's Winter Hill Gang. He fled Boston after a car bombing and reinvented himself in Hollywood. Despite career highs, he faced personal loss. His wife died of cancer, and his adopted son died young. Rocco passed away in 2015 at 79 from pancreatic cancer. 9. Al Martino, Johnny Fontaine. Johnny Fontaine wasn't just a character, it was a reflection of Al Martino's own life. In The Godfather, Fontaine is a desperate singer begging Don Corleone to resurrect his career. In real life, Martino didn't need to act, he had already lived the part. Born Alfred Cini on October 7, 1927, in Philadelphia to Italian immigrant parents, Martino grew up surrounded by the sounds of opera and jazz. He started out as a bricklayer before finding fame in the early 1950s with the hit single Here in My Heart, which became the first ever #1 song on the UK singles chart. Almost overnight, he became an international star. But fame for Martino came with a sinister cost. The mafia allegedly bought his recording contract and strong-armed him for $75,000. When he resisted, the threats became real, and Martino fled to England in fear for his life. While he performed successfully overseas, his career in America crumbled. He watched from afar as opportunities slipped away, his name fading from the charts. When The Godfather was being cast, Martino saw a chance to reclaim the spotlight. Initially, the role of Johnny Fontaine went to singer Vic Damone. But Martino, allegedly with the backing of crime boss Russell Bufalino, launched a media campaign against the casting. Rumors swirled of behind-the-scenes intimidation, and Damone, fearing mob retaliation, dropped out. Martino got the role back, his life imitating his art. The parallels didn't stop there. Like Fontaine, Martino struggled with the long shadow of his early fame. He battled alcoholism and endured 3 failed marriages. Though he continued to perform in clubs and nostalgic music specials, he never fully regained the stardom he once knew. Still, audiences remembered that voice, that smooth, velvety croon tinged with longing and heartbreak. His performance in The Godfather gave his legacy a second act, even as the man himself faded from the spotlight. On October 13, 2009, just 6 days after his 82nd birthday, Al Martino died of heart failure at his home in Springfield, Pennsylvania. He was buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in California. In the end, like Johnny Fontaine, Al Martino's story was one of music, loyalty, regret, and a quiet plea for redemption that echoed long after the final curtain. 10. Morgana King, Carmela Corleone. She was the Corleone matriarch, but Morgana King was also a jazz legend with a 4-octave range. Despite releasing 30-plus albums, mainstream success eluded her. She lost her second husband in a car crash and her only daughter in 2008. She died alone in 2018 from lymphoma, her name fading from the headlines but not from history. 11. Julie Gregg, Sandra Corleone. Julie Gregg played Sonny's gentle wife, but off-screen, her life was filled with struggle. A Tony-nominated actress, she starred in hit TV shows through the 60s and 70s. But she walked away from the spotlight, choosing privacy over performance. She died of cancer in 2016 at 79. No fanfare, no tribute, just a quiet farewell. 12. Sterling Hayden, Captain McCluskey. Sterling Hayden's performance as the corrupt and brutal Captain McCluskey in The Godfather was brief but unforgettable. Towering, cold, and intimidating, he perfectly embodied the kind of authority you didn't trust. But in truth, Hayden didn't want to be on that set or any set at all. Born on March 26, 1916, in Upper Montclair, New Jersey, Hayden didn't start out as an actor. He was a fisherman, a merchant marine, and later, a decorated war hero. At just 22, he was already sailing schooners across the Atlantic. He described the sea not as a backdrop, but as his true home. Hollywood discovered him in the 1940s, billing him as the most beautiful man in movies. With his striking features and commanding presence, he was cast in noir classics like The Asphalt Jungle and The Killing. But Hayden hated acting from the start. He considered it soulless and artificial, a means to an end, earning enough money to fund his adventures at sea. His disdain for Hollywood only grew deeper after his involvement with the House Un-American Activities Committee, WAC. In 1951, under intense pressure, he named names of former Communist Party members. He later called it the greatest shame of his life, a betrayal that haunted him to the grave. Hayden's personal life reflected his inner conflict. He was married twice, both times ending in turmoil. His relationships with his children were strained, a casualty of his restlessness and alcohol addiction. He lived on a houseboat in Sausalito, California, where he often disappeared for days, drinking, writing, and reflecting. Despite his contempt for acting, he continued to take roles when money ran short. He made a striking comeback as the deranged General Jack D. Ripper in Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove, a performance that turned his real-life paranoia into cinematic gold. When The Godfather came along, Hayden agreed to play Captain McCluskey for one reason: the paycheck. He later admitted he took the job to pay back taxes and fund another sea voyage. It was classic Hayden, using Hollywood to escape it. He died of prostate cancer on May 23, 1986, at the age of 70. No red carpets, no tributes, just the quiet passing of a man who spent his life running from the fame others spent theirs chasing. A rebel, a wanderer, a reluctant legend. 13. Richard Castellano Clemenza. Leave the gun, take the cannoli. With one line, Richard Castellano became a legend. He was offered Godfather Part 2 but refused due to a dispute with Coppola. His absence marked the beginning of a career decline. Struggling with health issues, Castellano died of a heart attack in 1988 at just 55, his greatest role forever frozen in time. The Godfather will forever be a towering masterpiece of cinema. But for many of the actors who made it unforgettable, life after the film was far from glamorous. Behind the scenes were battles with addiction, loss, scandal, and sorrow. They gave us legendary performances, and in return, we remember them not just as actors, but as human beings who gave everything, sometimes too much, to their art. Which of these stories surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell, because sometimes the most powerful drama isn't scripted, it's real life.